아침 8시 반,
Athletesrelief.org
9시입니다.
is providing COVID-19 relief in a unique way. Just pledge a
운동하고
minimum of
씻고
$25 for a chance to win
영어하고
signed memorabilia
갔다가
from top global stars.
출근하겠습니다.
Professional athletes were stepping up, giving quite a bit of money in their local communities, schools, food banks, meals, and even displaced workers at arenas where they worked. But they all said they were missing one thing, and that was something to do together. So that's what we did. We facilitated an idea, Athletes for Relief, and it's a place where all athletes donate one signed piece of memorabilia, and fans from around the world can donate money all to relief efforts, Center for Disaster Philanthropy's COVID-19 Relief Fund, but also win their favorite heroes' memorabilia.
You want a shot at Wazzy Makram's cricket bat or Chloe Kim's signed snowboard? The fundraiser ends June 1st. For more information on how you can help during this pandemic, go to cnn.com/impact.
I'm Sam Kiley in Abu Dhabi, and this is CNN.
Business is all about making connections. But some connections are easier to make than others. With a CNN partner hotel, the world is always at your fingertips. CNN partner hotels, connected to your world.
So many questions about what is the federal government doing. Do you get the anger that is out here? They closed off this entire street.
Do you really think you're a champion of the gay community?
Sir, with all due respect, that's the argument of a 5-year-old.
I didn't start it. All the places I've been and all the things I've seen, all the people I've talked to, I carry with me. They're part of what I do every night right here, holding the powerful accountable, keeping them honest.
AC 360, Tuesday through Saturday only on CNN.
I'm Clarissa Ward in London, and this is CNN.
This is CNN Tonight. I'm Don Lemon. Our breaking news, a source telling CNN the president has expressed concern that his aides coming down with the coronavirus would undercut his message that the outbreak is waning and states should begin reopening. His message, it's all about the message, not the truth, which is that the death toll in this country is getting closer and closer to 80,000 as models continue to be revised upwards. Would you call that waning? That is, top health officials are going into quarantine as the Trump administration tries to contain a coronavirus outbreak in the White House itself. The CDC director, Dr. Robert Redfield, FDA Commissioner Dr. Stephen Hahn, and Dr. Anthony Fauci all self-quarantining after coming into contact with a person who tested positive for the virus. Officials haven't said who that is, but we know of at least 2 people close to the president or vice president who have tested positive. Mike Pence's press secretary, Katie Miller, who was often in the coronavirus task force meetings, and one of the president's Oval Office valets. A Pence spokesman says the vice president has tested negative and is not in quarantine. White House senior economic advisor Kevin Hassett says going to work in the West Wing is, and this is his word, scary. Goes on to tell CNN this.
와 진짜 스트레칭을 매일 하는 것도
When I was going back
힘드네.
in, that I would be taking risks, that you know, I'd be safer sitting at home at my house than going into a West Wing that, even with all the testing in the world and the best medical team on earth, is a relatively cramped place.
아 진짜 나중에
want you to
PT를
look at this
받든
diagram.
필라테스나 요가나 이런
You can see
거를
just how close together a
다녀야 될
lot
것
of
같아요.
those offices are. Look
여러분
at that.
돈을
But
쓰셔야
the big
됩니다.
question in all of this,
이
how many
건강해지려면
Americans are going to
돈이
feel
최고예요,
safe
역시.
going back to our workplaces while the virus is spreading, even in the White House? While the White House operates on a do as I say, but not as I do policy, some officials telling CNN it was only a matter of time before the virus arrived in the West Wing, where aides had rarely worn masks and social distancing is recommended in theory, but often doesn't happen. A source telling CNN that the president doesn't want to be near anyone who hasn't been tested and has bristled when coming into contact with some people in the White House. 11 Secret Service agents currently have the virus. And get this, he's reportedly asked why his valets weren't ordered to wear masks sooner. Really, Mr. President? You want to know why your valets weren't ordered to wear masks when you yourself have constantly refused to wear one? Just 2 days ago, the president refused to wear a mask at an event with elderly World War II veterans. I've said this again and again, but it is really important. This is about saving lives. Wearing a mask is not about protecting yourself from the virus. It's about protecting other people. And those elderly veterans are at an age group that's especially at risk. Yet the president ignored that and made excuses about it later.
Mr. President, you were with 7 American heroes earlier today, these World War II veterans, all in their 90s. Did you consider wearing a mask when you were with them, given their...
No, because I was very far away. I appreciate the question. I was very far away from them, as you know. I would have loved to have got up and hugged them because they're great. I had a conversation with everyone, but we were very far away. You saw. Plus, the wind was blowing so hard in such a direction that if the plague ever reached them, I'd be very surprised.
It was far away. I was far away. It was windy. I didn't hug them. Look, we all know masks can be uncomfortable. We all know they can be inconvenient. Millions of Americans are wearing them anyway, but not the president. He claimed he wore a mask when he visited a Honeywell mask factory last week, even though nobody saw him wearing one.
Yeah, I had a mask on for a period of time.
We didn't see you with a mask.
Well, I can't help it if you didn't see me. I mean, I had a mask on, but I didn't need it. And I asked specifically the head of Honeywell, should I wear a mask? And he said, well, you don't need one in this territory. And as you know, we were far away from people, from the people making the masks. They were making the masks. But I did put a mask on, and it was a Honeywell mask, actually. And I also had a 3M mask, and I had about 4 other masks. But I did have it on. I don't know if you saw it or not, but I had it on.
And let's not forget what the president said right after he announced the CDC's guidance that Americans should wear masks in public.
Somehow sitting in the Oval Office behind that beautiful Resolute desk, the great Resolute desk, I think wearing a face mask as I greet presidents, prime ministers, dictators, kings, queens, I don't know, somehow I don't see it for myself.
He doesn't see it for himself, even as the death toll gets closer to 80,000. But in the face of all that, the president having a Twitter meltdown today, well over 100 tweets and retweets on everything from Michael Flynn to journalists he thinks should give back their Pulitzer Prizes. And tweeting, so great to see our country starting to open up again, along with a retweet of the reopening of his LA golf club. His LA golf club. Can you believe that? And here we go again, comparing himself to the former president, Barack Obama. He just can't quit Obama. His predecessor lives rent-free in his head, especially after the former president blasted the Trump administration's coronavirus response, calling it, quote, an absolute chaotic disaster during a private call with people who work for him in the White House. That was confirmed to CNN by 3 former Obama administration officials who were on the call. So yeah, the president, he's got Obama on his mind, bragging that he is getting great marks for his handling of the coronavirus and claiming that his marks are better than President Obama's for his handling, Obama's handling of H1N1, which is, again, fantasy, something he made up in his mind. It is wrong. The website 538 finds just 43% of Americans approve of how President Trump is handling the coronavirus outbreak. 43. 51 disapproved. This is a CNN poll from November of 2009, which found that 57% of Americans approved of the then President Barack Obama's handling of swine flu. 40% disapproved. And with Election Day less than 6 months away, the president continuing to beat the drum for states to reopen, ignoring the fact that they haven't met his own guidelines, and apparently ignoring the key coronavirus model frequently cited by his own White House. The University of Washington now forecasting 137,000 deaths by August, up from last week's prediction of 134,000. And that's not the total number of deaths. That's their prediction for the beginning of August. The director of the institute behind that model saying this.
We're seeing just explosive increases in mobility in a number of states that we expect will translate into more cases and deaths, in 10 days from now.
A top doctor, a scientist, saying increases in mobility, people coming out from under stay-at-home orders, will lead to more cases and more deaths. Now, I think we all agree that we want our economy to come back as soon as possible. But is that the bargain we're making now? Reopening the economy and letting more Americans die? Is that our bargain? Let's turn now to our White House correspondent, Mr. Jeremy Diamond. He joins us now live. Jeremy, good evening to you. Talk to me about your new reporting tonight on the Vice President, please.
Well, Don, as you said, Vice President Mike Pence, he is not planning to go into self-quarantine after his press secretary, Katie Miller, tested positive for coronavirus on Friday. His spokesman, Devin O'Malley, telling us in a statement, the Vice President will continue to follow the advice of the White House Medical Unit and is not in quarantine. And he also notes that the Vice President has tested negative during his daily coronavirus tests thus far, and that he plans to be at the White House tomorrow. That is especially notable, Don, given the fact that 3 doctors on the coronavirus task force, the head of the CDC, the head of the FDA, and Dr. Anthony Fauci, all of them are entering some form of self-quarantine for the next 14 days after they came into contact with a White House official who tested positive for coronavirus. All of those announcements came within 24 hours of Katie Miller, the Vice President's press secretary, who's also a spokesperson for the coronavirus task force, after she tested positive for the virus. And certainly the Vice President has been in far more prolonged contact with his press secretary than those 3 members of the task force. So not only a contradiction here between how different Trump administration officials are handling this matter, but also really the Vice President here going against, it would seem, CDC guidelines, which say that if you've been in prolonged contact with someone who's tested positive for coronavirus, that means within 6 feet close contact of that individual for a prolonged period of time, that you should stay at home for 14 days after your last contact with that person. And Don, we are also learning just now via our Pentagon correspondent, Barbara Starr, that Admiral Michael Gilday, the Chief of Naval Operations, he is also going to be self-isolating for several days after he came into contact with a family member who tested positive for coronavirus. Gilday was not at the White House last night when the president met with several of his top military leaders, and it would appear that this is the reason why.
Okay, so Kevin Hassett was on this morning. Kevin Hassett has said, his words, it is scary going to work at the White House. What is the feeling for people going to work there beyond Kevin Hassett? I mean, you've got a number of people. You've got 11 Secret Service agents as of now. I think there were others, Jeremy, who had tested positive and are now negative. I mean, what is the feeling there?
Yeah, well, there's certainly been a heightened level of concern inside the White House since not only Katie Miller, the vice president's press secretary, tested positive on Friday, but a few days before that, one of the president's military valets who works in the Oval Office also tested positive for coronavirus. So there's certainly been a heightened level of concern. We haven't really seen that translate yet in terms of specific policies beyond the fact that any top official who comes into contact with the president is now going to be tested on a daily basis instead of a weekly basis. So that is one change, but no change, for example, in terms of making masks mandatory at the White House. We have, however, noticed that Secret Service agents, for example, have begun to wear masks, at least those who are in close contact with the president. We saw one Secret Service agent during the president's meeting with military officials yesterday who was wearing a mask in that room, whereas the day before, none of the members of the president's protective detail were wearing masks. There is also a heightened level of concern for the president himself. A source who spoke with the president telling our colleague Kevin Liptak that the president has actually expressed concerns about these aides who have contracted coronavirus, particularly because he believes that this would undercut his message in terms of the need to reopen the economy and to convince not only the governors of these various states to reopen their economies, but to convince everyday Americans to go back to work. And certainly there is a contradiction in this news that one of these top White House officials has tested positive for coronavirus is indeed undercutting that message, because the White House is perhaps one of the places where you have the most protocols in place in terms of this rapid coronavirus testing, thermometer checks, symptom checks being done at the White House. And at the same time, governors in many states across the country are beginning to ask workers to go back to work. Many of those workplaces, Don, of course, do not have all of those safety protocols in place.
Jeremy, I have to go because I have a big show ahead, but do you know, are you observing complete social distancing at the White House? Are they following the rules that they give to everyone else? I know that they aren't all wearing masks. We can see that from the video from the president, the vice president, and from Katie Miller herself. But are they doing the 6 feet distancing and all of those protocols? I know they're supposed to do it, but are you seeing it?
Yeah, we haven't seen a ton of activity at the White House this weekend, so it's hard to judge. But certainly yesterday in the president's meeting with military leaders, there was some distancing between him and other military officials, but they were certainly not 6 feet apart. And last week we saw White House officials huddling together during various events. So we'll see if that starts to change. But again, the White House keeps pointing us to the fact that these rapid tests are being done. But Don, as you know, these Abbott lab tests that give you results within 15 minutes, there's a 15% false negative rate there. So if 100 people are taking this test at the White House on any given day, 15 of those might have the virus and are testing negative for it nonetheless.
Yeah, and a rapid test is not a vaccine. Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate your reporting. Thank you so much. Top health officials going into quarantine, and the president is worried that the virus spreading inside the White House, as you heard Jeremy say, will undercut his message that it's time for America to get back to business, and the outbreak is waning, with nearly 80,000 Americans dead. Does that sound like waning to you?
Coronavirus is affecting an entire country, the world. Are we ready? In the beginning of outbreaks like this, nobody knows what's happening. We're determined to keep reporting the story.
That's not worried, because that seems to be what worries the American, because we're ready for it.
These are the moments where our humanity really does shine through. That's the hardest part. It's heart-wrenching. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, CNN.
As the global economy adjusts to life in lockdown, many businesses are leaping into action to join the fight against COVID-19. With healthcare providers under strain, BIC is manufacturing and donating protective equipment in an effort to support hospitals in crisis. Also aiding healthcare workers, the PepsiCo Foundation has announced a $45 million initiative to fight the virus. The fund will provide protective equipment and test kits while distributing millions of nutritious meals worldwide. Meanwhile, multinational company Johnson & Johnson is committing $50 million to support frontline healthcare workers and has committed $1 billion toward coronavirus vaccine and therapy research. For more stories of the people making a difference and to find out how you can impact your world, go to cnn.com/impact.
I got a message from my father. He said, have you thought about making hand sanitizer? I thought, no, it's just going to be silly for us to get into it. And then no less than a week later, I was already making bulk alcohol for hand sanitizer.
It has been a wild ride to learn how and to try to get all the pieces in place. The labeling, or we'll wait. The partnership with Meals on Wheels, I think, was motivating, but also it felt like we had a focus.
Thanks for coming today, ladies. The first thing I want you to do is sanitize your hands. Miscellaneous Distillery came through with the hand sanitizer that they've made, and that's what we've been using. All of our volunteers use it, all of our staff use it. It really has been just a community effort. There's so many pieces of this where people are just stepping up and doing whatever they can.
We're very happy, very grateful that we can continue to work, continue to be supportive of the community, continue to be supportive of our staff, and serve a function in this time.
Opera houses, theatres and ballet schools all closed. But for the world's top dancers, the show must go on. From a kitchen for the Bolshoi to door frames and balconies for the Czech National Ballet. And now dancers from the Paris Opera House dancing to Prokofiev's Romeo and Juliet from home. Despite being filmed on cell phones, these performances are powerful, resonating with people all over the world.
Because they shot themselves at home, I think that there's something about being normal human beings, because they're exceptional dancers, but they're also fathers and mothers.
They performed this as a thank you to all the essential workers, saving lives and keeping the world going outside.
Welcome to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. We're going to begin with the politics lead, and one of the biggest bombshells today, the straight talk you need. That seems to be, to me, completely contradicting from your man in Washington. It's all food for thought when you and the public are
너무 좋습니다.
who to trust, who won't back down.
이거 10개만 들고
Congressional Republicans already are facing
오늘은 그만할게요. 쉬고 이제 영화관을 가야 되겠습니다.
Tuesday through Saturday on CNN.
Here's what a spokesman is saying tonight, that the Vice President, Mike Pence, will not self-quarantine despite his press secretary testing positive for coronavirus. And Pence plans to be at the White House tomorrow. I want to bring in CNN's political analyst Michael Shear, and White House correspondent for the New York Times. Also with us is Dr. Harvey Feinberg, the chair of the Standing Committee on Emerging Infectious Diseases. Gentlemen, good evening. Thank you both for joining us. I appreciate it. Michael, I'm going to start with you because your latest reporting with Maggie Haberman says that there is a fear inside the West Wing that the virus is already spreading rapidly. Were the guidelines of wearing masks or social distancing or any of those